Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Matan Scharf, and in every conference you have to make something a little bit different, a little bit special, so I decided not to show up. I figured maybe that would be an innovation. Speaking of innovation, today's session talks about the future of cybersecurity, reinventing cybersecurity. And to introduce this session, I would actually like to talk a little bit about myself, of all things. I would like to tell you about me. I finished my Army service and then had the great privilege and fortune to be accepted to work at a company called Checkpoint. I worked there for 8 years, best years of my life, and I can't tell you enough about what a great place it is to work in. And then after I finished working for Checkpoint, I started a new path and actually opened a startup. And then I was again fortunate enough to receive a grant from the OCS, from the Office of the Chief Scientist, to help me promote my research. And finally, just recently, I started teaching here in Tel Aviv University in the Veltsman unit for science-oriented youth in a program called the Scientists and Inventors of the Future. I teach them C, programming, which is one of my favorite topics to teach. And the reason why I'm telling you all of this, because I was invited here today, I'm a member here in the Yuval Ne'eman workshop in Tel Aviv University. I was invited to host this session, and in this session I have the great privilege to have 4 people that are very meaningful to me personally and were a part and are still a part of my life today in the story that I told you about myself. So without further ado, I would like to first invite on stage one of my personal role models, Mr. Gil Shwed. Gil is the Checkpoint founder, chairman, and chief executive officer. He's considered the inventor of the modern firewall and holds several patents such as the company's stateful inspection technology. Mr. Shwed received numerous accolades for his individual achievements and industry contribution, including an honorary doctorate of science from the Technion Israel Institute of Technology and the World Economic Forum's Global Leader of Tomorrow recognition for his commitment to public affairs and leadership in areas beyond immediate professional interests. Mr. Shwed is a member of the Board of Trustees of the Tel Aviv University and the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Youth University of Tel Aviv University. He's also a member of the board of directors of Yecholot Association, founded by Rashi Foundation, whose charter is, among other things, to reduce dropout rates in high schools. Mr. Shwed, please, if you would like to join us on stage. As Gil is getting comfortable, I promise you there will be 4 people today. So now I would like to ask you guys to give a warm welcome to 2 of my pupils, Keren and Shir. David and Shir, I'm sorry.
My name is David Keren-Ya'ar, from the clip we just saw. I live in Ramat Aviv, which is actually across the street. I'm 15 years old, and I just finished 9th grade. I would like to tell you a little bit about my home. Imagine a small city apartment with no television and a good-hearted mother sending her son to ballet as his first after-school class at the age of 6. So why am I here? How did I end up studying cyber? Shouldn't I be hanging out now with my friends? Well, some of my best friends are right here, and I'll tell you about the fun we had last year in the Scientists and Inventors of the Future program. We studied Python and C programming. We also studied discrete mathematics. Next year, we'll learn linear algebra and extended introduction to computer science. My hero is Tony Stark, Iron Man. For some of you, it may be Steve Austin, the $6 million man with the bionic arm. Iron Man is a perfect combination of a machine and one man who thinks larger than life. But for now, Iron Man lives entirely in movies. So to tell you more about my real life, I'm a social animal, and I make up for my small family by having many friends. Some of them can be nagging because they are much different than me, but we plan to build a world together. Seeking challenge in math, I joined the scientists and inventors of the future. The program taught me to appreciate computer science, and now I want to deal with artificial intelligence and human-machine interface when I'll grow up. The only thing left is to promise next time I'll be here, it will be with my intelligent Iron Man suit. Thank you.
Hello. I am very happy to participate in this conference and really excited to stand here in front of you. My name is Shir Veltsman. I am 14 years old, I live in Karkur, and I am a student in Gvanim School. I just finished the 9th grade. I am the eldest child in my family, and I have 2 younger sisters in the elementary school. I love to play the piano, dancing, and art, but above all, I love math and programming. I started my way in science at high school. I chose to learn computers and physics. I learned in Mofet program and scientific technology reserve. 2 years ago, I learned math in a special program of children in Bar-Ilan University. Last year, my teacher sent me an email about the program Scientists and Inventors of the Future in Tel Aviv University, which had several courses. One of them was cyber. I chose to learn cyber because I thought that this subject is interesting and fascinating because it's innovative. This program, it is also a place to meet friends. In this year, I had the honor to meet smart and lovely students in my age. In addition to the 2 days a week that we study together, we also hang out in the weekends and have a great time. In my first year, I learned to program in C, Python, and assembly, and the course Discrete Mathematics. When I grow up and join the military, I want to help defend our country in a cyber unit. In the future, I hope to learn and work in the field of cyber and the human mind. I hope that next time we meet, I will tell you about my new research. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Shir. Actually, David and Shir prepared a few questions they would like to ask you, Gil, if that's okay with you. You guys can pick up the mic and ask your questions, please.
One of the trends in cybersecurity is carbon hacking. Do you think that Check Point one day also address this challenge, and what do you think can be done?
First, I know close to nothing about carbon hacking. I think you may want to explain what it is to the audience, because I don't know if everybody knows that. So I don't know if you want to try and give a shot of it or...
Carbon hacking is, I don't know how to explain it, but it's a combination of the human mind and biology to cyber.
So at least from my perspective, this still belongs to the future, and it's more in the field of medicine or biology and less in the field of computer science today. I think the challenge that we have is, I think there's 2 things. As a company, the challenge that we have is to reinvent ourselves every few years and to add more technology and to face the newest threats. So right now it's not a real threat yet, and it will become a real threat. We will have to study it and see what we can do. I think if I take the bigger perspective, clearly it should, I think it's a pretty scary thought that somebody can spy into our mind and read our thoughts. But I think that in every generation, as human beings, we are afraid from the new invention and from the new technology. If you asked men 200 years ago, they'd prefer the horse on a car. And I think that's true in every generation, and yet I think we look with every generation, technology actually does advances our society, and technology can be used for bad things, but is mainly used, and that's more an ethical issue, for good things. And I think that's still the one thing that as human beings we have to, the ethics that we have to care about is seeing how we can utilize new technologies for good things and not for bad things.
Sometimes I have ideas for things that I would like to develop. What do you think is the best way to test my ideas and make them a reality?
I think when you develop something, you have to think first what's your goal. Is your goal to do something fun? You can develop it. It's great. If your goal is to solve a problem of your own, then you can think whether you're solving that problem. If you're trying to start a bigger enterprise or a bigger effort in that space, you need to see what's the target audience and check first if you can solve the problem, and mainly if the target audience is interested in your problem. So it's asking people. I mean, if you'd have that application, would you buy it? Would you use it? What would you do with it? And in many cases, we see that some of our best ideas don't have a market. People are not interested in them. It doesn't mean that they are not good ideas. It doesn't mean that they won't find a place in our world, but it's going to be a much tougher road, and maybe it's not the right time. So I think the main thing is ask relevant people in whether they'd like to see that idea, and I think then you get a lot of wisdom. You sometimes learn that ideas that you'll have already exist. You sometimes learn that people are interested in things in the same space but slightly different, and I think that's a very important lesson for every entrepreneur.
If you were a high school student today, what would you study?
I think first I'd study what I'm interested in and what makes me enjoy life. If you ask me personally, I studied computer science. I still think it's probably the best thing to learn for the future. Not because of the economical effect, but because it's not because you can find great jobs in that, and there is a lot of industry around that. I think the main reason is because it's very creative. In computer science, it's one of the very, very few professions that every person, whether it's a young kid or an older developer, can go to the office and create something completely new, and really goes into the imagination and creativity that's hard to find in our world. And that's the very, very unique thing in computer science, still is today, and that's what excites me in the ability to turn my own imagination or my own idea into reality and into place things that people will actually use.
When will computers match human intuition, and in what subject will it happen first?
First, I wish I knew. I'm far from being an expert in artificial intelligence. Personally, I don't think that computers will match human brain, and I don't think that's what we're trying to achieve. Computers are doing many jobs better than people, and there are many other things that are left to us humans that we can do in a better way, in a way that doesn't compete with computers. And I think that's the way we need to think about it, rather than try to think about the competition between computers and people. And I think if we look today, there are many, many tasks that 20 or 30 years ago we thought that a person can do better, and today the computer is doing better. Even look at the very basic thing we're doing every day is searching for information. 30 years ago, when we wanted to search for information, we went for people that were very knowledgeable, and we went for the library, and we used humans' help. And today it's you type one line in the internet, and you get all humankind getting to you usually in a more relevant and better way. So that's matching what people used to do in the past, or exceeding it, actually.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, please thank me together with me. Thanks, Shir and David, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Now I would like to invite, for the second part of this session this morning, I would like to invite Mr. Avi Hasson. Mr. Hasson is the chief scientist of the Ministry of Economy of Israel since January 2011. The OCS in the Israeli Ministry of Economy is the government entity in charge of the execution of government policy for support of industrial R&D. The variety of ongoing support programs developed and offered by the OCS play a major role in enabling Israel to be a key center for high-tech entrepreneurship. For 10 years prior to his appointment, Mr. Hasson was a general partner at Gemini Israeli Funds, one of the Israelis' top-tier venture capital firms. Mr. Hasson holds a BA from Tel Aviv University in Economics and Middle East Studies, as well as an MBA from Tel Aviv University. Mr. Avi Hasson, thank you.
Hi, Gil.
Hi, good morning.
Good to see you. So just so that you're sure you know who's who, the guy with the jacket is the entrepreneur, the guy with the shirt is the government official. Now we got that set. Glad to be here at this great event. Matan, thank you for your kind words, and really I think looking at this industry growing from year to year shows the great potential that we have. I think we're going to talk a little bit more about macro perspective. Look at the ecosystem, both in Israel and global. Try to see how we got here and where are we going. I think from our perspective, 2014 was a great year for cyber. Many Israeli startups raising money. The business is good, I believe, looking at what Checkpoint and other companies is doing. And 2015 shaping up to be just as good as a year. But we're in Israel. And, you know, as the former President Peres says, the biggest contribution of the Jewish people to mankind is dissatisfaction. So we're never satisfied. I want to talk about the challenges. I want to talk about the things that, at least from our perspective, we see as problematic. And let me throw one data point at you, Gil, and let's see what you think about it. So, again, while we see the fundraising is strong, and many companies are raising money, and obviously that's good because venture capital is the fuel to the technology industry, this is still not reflecting in sales. And we see many small companies now finding it a little bit hard to penetrate the customers, to create scales, and certainly to ramp up. What's your view on that? How do you look at the ecosystem? Is this good? Is it just a phase? What are the main challenges that those companies have when trying to go into the market?
I think first we have a great ecosystem with a lot of good ideas and great entrepreneurs. I think the challenge that entrepreneurs face, not just in Israel, all over the world, is that there's too many of the us or them. There's too many good ideas, there's too many companies, and if you just look at the ability of the buyer, in most cases it's the head of the IT department in any company to absorb all this new technology, it's almost impossible. When I started Checkpoint, every year there were, let's say, 1 or 2 new big trends in technology, and in each area there were 3 companies competing to be the best. And then every company or every idea got a chance, and every company that was really good got the chance to be the leader. If you think about the fact that today in our world, I don't know the numbers, but I think it's in the thousands of new companies every year, a buyer of technology cannot look at all these ideas, cannot evaluate them. And that makes it very, very hard for both the startups and the large companies to promote completely new products or completely new categories. And also from the macroeconomic perspective, the amount of money that's invested had to be divided not amongst the top 20, 50, or 100 companies, but amongst 5,000 companies. And that makes the share of everyone smaller. And I think that's a global challenge. I don't know if there's a good solution for it. I think that's the market powers that have to take care of it.
Yeah, so let me share with you at least some of the things we've been doing within the Office of the Chief Scientist, because I agree very much with the challenge, even though I would say, and I know you agree, that in several aspects it's easier to be an entrepreneur in 2015 than maybe it was 20 or 25 years ago. Technology building blocks are there. And we heard from the youngsters about the things they can do just by accessing open source technology or cloud and so on. At least I believe, and I have to say it, Gil, because every time I go on stage I say it, that the most important word in the world of innovation is collaboration. And it's our belief that a lot of the challenges can be overcome by collaborating. And of course collaboration is industry and academia, which is relevant to this place, but it's also between companies. And here it's where big companies can work with small companies because each of them is getting something from the deal. Sometimes you're getting cutting-edge technology, which not necessarily is within your priorities, while the smaller company is getting the infrastructure, the market understanding, and the channels. So a lot of our platforms and funding schemes are exactly to make those combinations. Is Checkpoint doing any of that?
We do have programs that we work with many startups, learning what we're doing. Sometimes we acquire them. Just this year, We acquired two small Israeli startups with one without sales and one with very little sales. And when we think that they are a great base for some of key capabilities in our products in the next few years. I think there's also a lot of room for other things. For example, we have what we call a Threat Cloud IntelliStore. That's in the subject we are discussing here. We are creating a marketplace for companies that have cyber intelligence about future attacks, and we are allowing all our customers, a big audience of customers, to access that information and the prevention that we can deduct out of the work of these companies. So that's an example of working like that. But at the end of the day, one thing we have to remember about startups, for startup, it's really the life of the people who are doing them, and they have to fight for their future. It's not a collaboration or other people that will take care of them. Every entrepreneur have to understand that they are going to go into a big, I don't want to call it a fight, it's not a negative thing, but a big struggle to find their unique place in the world and prove it to the world and be winners of their own.
Yet I think, again, we can do a lot to reduce some of the risk, because we want people taking that challenge, which is important. Let's talk a little bit about Israel. Check Point is a multinational company, obviously a global company, but you have very strong Israeli roots. No need to explain, I think, to anyone in the audience. At least from our perspective, we're seeing both phenomena happening, and we can talk about cyber, even though it's not limited to that, with multinational companies coming to this country to set up R&D mostly centers here, leveraging the innovation ecosystem, and Yoav Yaron showed a little bit about the strength of Tel Aviv or Israel in general as such. We also see some Israeli companies sometimes going the other way around, at least focusing on government's role, but obviously I'd love you to talk about more. We have the OCS incentives, which take some of the financial burden and are very important, and we know that many times that R&D funding is essential to companies when they make the decision. We have, of course, also regulation, and regulation is also important in the world of cybersecurity. Regulation, which includes both export control policies as well as intellectual property limitations as of such, can be meaningful. Certainly it's my perspective as the chief scientist and as the promoter of the industry that we should be as open as possible to promote the industry without harming national security naturally, and there should be a balance. But apart from national security, there should be no other factor impacting the regulation. How does Check Point look at that? How's Israel leveling up with other places?
I'll start with talking specifically on regulation and export control. Luckily, as a company that mainly talks about defense, there's little export control on what we do, and we get along pretty well with the government, so I don't have any complaints. I think in general, and I do hear this phenomena today, about about actually large Israeli companies that dealing with cyber, that are actually trying to buy companies outside Israel and keep their intellectual property and keep their people outside Israel, so they are not forced to work by the regulation that's in Israel. That's not a good phenomena for Israel or anywhere in the world. It's better to have these companies here and to have these people here, and it's better to have for the country. It's better to have little control than to have no control at all on what's being done in these spaces. And I think that's the one thing in macro that governments have to remember today. In the internet world, there's no boundaries, and companies, whether it's from taxation or regulation or access to people, companies can move very quickly, and companies can go everywhere they want, and there's no physical boundaries anymore to where a company should be. And Israel should be a very competitive place for companies that they want to base their, again, both their people, their intellectual property, their profits, all of that. As a country, we have to compete for the companies because the world is open, and Israel, as much as I love it and I'm based here and my company's here and I want to be here, it's not the only place in the world. And again, as an entrepreneur, and many startups are Israeli startups, but then they create themselves as non-Israeli companies, and that also has a lot of advantages in a world when Israel is not always the best brand name for political reasons, not for technology reasons.
Yeah, so we're very aware of the competitive space, and again, Israel is not unique in its innovation policies or capabilities. We do have a very strong ecosystem. a lot of what we do as part of the Office of the Chief Scientist is to worry about the next 20 years. So we're kind of close to wrapping up, so I want to talk about the last 20 years and the next 20 years, and again, we'll do it macro and micro. So from our perspective, the last 20 years were all about creation. Obviously, it's some of the forefathers of the Israeli high-tech is here, but in the, let's say, late 80s, there was, certainly the startup nation was not in place. There was very little high-tech in this country. And in these 20 years, and government, I believe, played a positive role in that, an ecosystem was created with venture capital and human capital, with stronger industry-academia collaboration, with a very supporting, and of course, the entrepreneurs that we see. And actually, everybody's an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter what your role is, right? You're the coordinator. We have researchers. We have company. We have government officials. We're all entrepreneurs in this country. I think the next 20 years are going to be about something different. And at least from our perspective, it is about, well, first of all, keep your leading position, because we worked hard to getting there. But second is, how can we increase the economic impact? And how can we, and again, it was shown, Muli Eden talked about the education part. So how do we increase the number of students? And it's true not only for high schools, it's true also for graduates of these places. It's also about how do we bring that innovation and notion to larger sectors within the industry, larger sectors within the country. And certainly that's how we look at things, looking at the next 20 years. And it's one of the reasons some of you might heard why we're creating a new national administration authority for technological innovation, because we realize that we can't keep doing what we've done. And this again goes to Checkpoint, because you grew very, very quickly, but obviously you're becoming of age. You're no longer a younger person. I'm not talking about yourself.
Okay.
You're certainly very young. By the way, it's just an advice, Gil. One of the reasons I moved to government is to be young again.
Okay.
Because in high-tech, we're kind of old. You move to government, all of a sudden you're very young.
We're investing in these programs in Tel Aviv University when you get
There you
this
go. So you get a share of the young. You get a share of the youngster.
When you can see these 14-year kids and feel young again.
So last 20 years and next 20 years, what's your take on that?
First, I've never tried to foresee the future. I don't think that I can, and I think it's usually, even if you got the right direction, you're not going to have it timed and sized correctly. But I think definitely we have a challenge, and definitely as a country, we can, first, the country is doing great in terms of high-tech. You talked about education, so yes, we need to have more students for computer science. And if you look at that phenomena, there's clearly things we can do better. Look at the big universities. In the major universities in Israel, the number of computer science students has not changed in the last 20 years, in the last 30 years, maybe except for Be'er Sheva, which really extended. In Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, the number of computer science students is the same, and it's not a big number. It's a few hundred students every year. So the demand is the industry is bigger, and if we can get these excellent universities to educate, to double and triple the number of students, it still be hundreds every year, but that can have a big impact on the universities and mainly on the economy, with better supply of excellent people that the universities have. There's a lot of other things we can do, and the main one, there's two things. One, I think, is education. The other is to attract companies to be here. And if I want to be critical on one thing, I think 4 or 5 years ago there was an initiative in the government to attract companies to be here and simplifying all the rules about preserving and attracting companies to be based in Israel. The last 3-4 years have pretty much, the last 3 years, not even 4 years, pretty much neglected this initiative, and as a company in the industry, we feel that, well, there's a lot of government officials that understand it and have a goodwill in that. The actual action is basically telling companies, go away. We don't want you more than we want a big bank or any other company in the country. And that's the action. Again, people are saying good things and people have goodwill, and I think the country have to remember that, because that's the companies that will either move or some of their operations from here, or the companies will simply, when they become large, they won't be here.
But Checkpoint 20 years from now, in a more personal level.
I wish I knew. I'd like to believe that we stay similar to where we've been, with with excellent people, with creativity, leading a market, sometimes maybe creating a market. 20 years ago we created the internet security or the firewall market. We are working on many other things. Today we're investing in mobile security. That's a huge threat for the future. We are investing in all the new technologies in threat prevention, and we believe that we have the best products and the best architecture and the best solution, but it's still for us to prove it. And that won't take just 1 year. It will be a 5-year journey and a 10-year journey and hopefully a 20-year journey.
So I think this conference is showing how much the perimeter is expanding. You talked about mobile and Internet of Things and wearable. I mean, you got years and years, I think, of growth in this industry. Certainly from our perspective, I think one of the goals or challenges will be to have 20 or 50 checkpoints. I think when we have that as a country, we're sure to have a very safe and bright future. And I think a lot of what brought us here, which is that unique collaboration and partnership between industry and academia and government, can also be at least the founding stones for the year to come. So I want to thank you, for this great and intimate conversation, and thank you, Matan, and thank you all.
Thank you both, and thank you. And again, thank you for Shir and David who joined us. You guys both spoke about the future. This is the future, and I think it's a bright and promising future. So thank you all for joining us today, and again, thank you guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you.